welcome back to this very first hands-on tutorial on introduction to data science. And in this tutorial, we are going to look at the first thing we are going to learn about. So let me just write that so you can also create it if you want to do it my way. So the first thing we are going to do is create data frames, creating data frames using pandas. And then so let's start with that. So what are data frames and what is pandas? So pandas is a Python library that allows you to read and write very fast, or even analyze and manipulate data in Python, and is very, very useful when you're dealing with tabular data, and that's why it's one of the most popular libraries in Python. It has got extra functionalities for advanced analysis and also even plotting capabilities. So pandas is very, very popular when you are dealing with tabular data, and that is why I saw it fit that we should take an example of tabular data. So in this case, and in most of your data science career or even research, you are likely to deal with data that is normally in tabular form, or even if it exists in other formats, you might be tempted to convert it into tabular form because it's just easy to analyze data that is in tabular form. So in Excel, data in tabular form is stored in terms of rows and columns, with each of the data stored in a specific dimension known as cells. So each of these rectangular are known as cells, but of interest of us today is the columns and the rows. So columns run vertically. So we have got data in 5 columns, and in Excel they are numbered by index A, B, C, D, E, but our columns have got specific names: country, independence, colonizer, course, and successful. And then we have got rows which are running horizontally. So they're running horizontally, and we have got a total of 12 rows to include the heading or the header. But in most cases, we'll just count them as 11 because those are the real data points. So each of these rows can also be known as data points, especially when you start operating in the regimes of artificial intelligence. Also, sometimes it might be, especially if you're dealing with the machine learning or deep learning section in our later part of this tutorial, we'll start referring to these columns as features. So we can say this data set has got 5 features. So this kind of data is very, very necessary, or is more suitable to be analyzed in Python by the aid of the pandas library, and that is where pandas comes in. But before you can read the data in pandas, you have to know in which format is your data in. So in our case, this is an Excel file. So usually Excel file are always in .xl xs as the file extension. But you also, in data science, most of data you are likely to convert them into a format known as comma-separated delimiter, CSV. So in that format, basically it's in Excel, but stored as each of these are separated by commas, and that is why the word comma comes into place. So that kind of data is normally known as CSV, and for that task, I want us the first task to do is to convert this Excel file into a CSV. So I'm going to provide you this Excel file. The link to downloading it is provided in your comment section or the description of this YouTube video. So you can just click on the description and you have access to this file. So once you get the file, download it as an Excel, and then you will be required to convert it into a CSV, and that is what we are going to do next. So on your my computer is not showing because I'm using Mac, but if you're using Windows, just go and click File and then do Save As. And once you do Save As, I want you to save it where your notebook is. So my notebook is here, or specifically, this is where my notebook is. So you can see this is my notebook, which is this, and I want you to save it here. So I want you to save it as .csv, delimited file. So .csv. So if you go to formats here, change it to CSV, and that is .csv, and then click save. So once you do that and you go to your folder, you should have it here. So I have the original one, which is .xlsx, and I have got the CSV. So make sure both of these two files are in the same folder where your notebook is, which is here, so that you have easy access to that file. So once we do that, the next thing we want to do is to call that file into Python, and then we'll convert it into DataFrame. So DataFrame is a format of reading Excel files into pandas, and basically what DataFrame does, it reads the data in forms of columns and rows, but now in Python, and therefore we can easily manipulate them as we wish. So that is what we want to do first. So to do that, we'll have to call the library that will help us with that. And if you remember our previous tutorial, to call a library in Python, we'll simply do import, but this time we are importing pandas, but I want us to import it as a shortcut, so we're gonna say import pandas as pd. So in other words, anytime you see pd in your code, it simply means pandas. So once we do that, we can run our code, and then the next thing, we want to import that file that we used, the file that we just saved, and then once we import it, we're gonna call it in Python, assign it a variable called df, so write df, and then to import that file in Python using pandas, given that we have used it as pd here, we'll just do pd, and when we use a function in pandas known as read CSV. So if you do read, if you do tab on your computer, it should give you options, so you can select CSV, and then opening and closing bracket, and then in between you type the name of that file plus the extension. So if you look at my file, let me share with you, my file name is Africa, so I'm gonna type it as Africa, but I'm calling the CSV also .csv. So that's why I told you that you should save it as .csv, and this one basically is the name of the file, and this is you are reading it. So if your file is in a different folder, then you will have to specify the folder. That is why I was insisting that you should have the file in the same folder for this purpose of this tutorial. So once we do that, we can run this code. By the way, I'm running the code by simply pressing Shift and Enter, and you can check that on our previous Jupyter video. So I'm just doing a recap so that in case you didn't watch that video, you can do that. So the first thing you want to do if you import data in Python now is to read it. So luckily, to read data in Jupyter or in using pandas, so we have read this data as a CSV and saved it to a variable called df. So if I type df, it should return my data, and as you can imagine, it has returned the data. But you realize that sometimes it returns the whole data points, but sometimes you'll be dealing with data set that is like thousands of data points, and it will not be convenient to return all. So to do that, to return just the first few sections of the data, you do df.head, and this returns basically the first 5 rows. So you can see these are the first 5 rows including the heading, so it's starting from 0 and stopping at 4. So this is the index in Python. So once you do that, and now you have got access to your data, the next thing you want to do is basically, sometimes you might have data that has got lots of columns or features. So to do that, you can always check the columns by names by just doing df, which is your data frame columns, and then run it. And by the way, this df, I'm just using df as a variable. You can use anything here. You can say that pd_sv is equal to data, but when you use data, you'll be calling it every time data. So the conventional way is on will just use df, and if you import a second one, you use df1. So now df.columns has returned all the columns in my data, so now I can know which columns are in my data. Although in this case it isn't that much important, because we already know, we can see all the columns, but trust me, you'll be dealing with data that has got maybe thousands or even hundreds of columns. Another thing you want to know is the shape of your data frame, or how many columns and rows it has. So to do that, you simply do df, which is the name of your data frame variable, and then do shape. So if you do this, it will return 11 and 15. So 11 represent the number of rows in your data, and 5 represent the number of columns. So if you look at this data, it has got 11 rows because it's 0 to 10. So the first one would have been 1, but it's the way the computer names it. And then the number of columns are these ones. And this one, by the way, is a tuple. So if I do rows, columns, and then do df.shape, then it should return each of these. So if I do rows, it will turn rows. If I do columns, it will return columns. So that is how you access or have a general idea of what's inside your data. So in the next section, we are going to look at accessing data and or accessing data from these data frames, and also doing basic operations or basic analysis of this data that we have. So please feel free to go and subscribe to the channel so that you receive notifications when I uploaded the next video, and also subscribe, like the video, give it a thumbs like, and share with your friends who might be interested in this kind of stuff. So with that, let's meet on the second part of this tutorial.